Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. I'll call to order the Village Board of Oregon meeting for Monday, October 20th, 2025. I'd ask the clerk to call roll, please.
Higgins.
Here.
Kirschdorfer.
Here.
Knipfer.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
McDaniel.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
And Van Kampen.
Here. Thank you. Item 3, approval of October 6th, 2025 Village Board meeting minutes. Tom and Tim. Questions, corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 4, public appearances, comments, communications, items for discussion and/or possible action. A, public comment. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. 15 minutes will be provided for this item with a 3-minute maximum per speaker. Anyone here for public comments? Public comments? No, thank you. Moving on. Item 5, approval of vouchers in the amount of $996,080.48. Staff recommendation. Motion to approve. Paige and Tim. Questions? Did I see a hand there?
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. Page 12, we had to move the electric line. I was just curious why that's on us and not Alliant Energy? Isn't that, don't they own that?
No.
It's the senior center.
Yeah, I understand what it's for, but I don't know. Okay. Then my second question, is there a bunch of charges for MRO payment? What are those?
Those are the municipal revenue obligations that we have with some of the developers, like for Jefferson Crossing downtown, Bodie Howe, Sleep In, Oregon Apartments too. So this is all related to the developer agreements that we set up with them when they started their projects.
Did anyone have a comment on Tim's first question? I don't.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want to respond to that related to the utility?
We're talking about the line that Alliant removed
Yeah,
that
in the
was
middle of
in the middle of our,
Yep.
our 3 properties. So the way that those properties were, that there was a property line that kind of bisected that whole part of that block. Alliant had poles through there, they had power over there that served different people, and then there was other utilities on those poles. When we combined all of those properties into a CSM, we forced them to abandon that. And, we requested them to remove that infrastructure and get it out of the way to make way for our site. So there was the cost for them to do that. And there is gonna also be a future cost where we're potentially having them do some underground electrical up on Brook Street. But those are things that we're requesting of Alliant because of how we were changing the property boundaries.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Can I jump in there, Phil?
please.
And what might be part of the confusion is when a utility has a line, an infrastructure in the right-of-way, and we have a project or someone else has a project they'd like to put in the right-of-way, generally, assuming they don't have a pre-existing easement before the road was there, generally that cost is borne by the utility to move or protect from other work. But in this case, it's just in the middle of, we're just like another landowner that needed something done for the property not in the right-of-way. So you'll see Alliant covering those costs generally when it's in the right-of-way and we need something moved.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else on the vouchers? Questions? Okay, this will be a roll call vote. We have a motion by Paige, second by Tim.
McDaniel.
Yes?
Van Kampen.
Yes.
Knipfer.
Yes.
Kirschdorfer.
Yes.
Marks.
Aye.
Higgins.
Yes.
And Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 6, consent agenda items 6A through 6G. Staff recommendation, motion to approve. Tim and Amanda. Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, reports of committees, none. Item 8, unfinished business, items for discussion and/or possible action. A, presentation and review of the new Oregon Area Senior Center and Community Gymnasium Project Design Development documents, including site plan, demolition, grading, and erosion control plan, utility plan and landscape plan, and review civil, landscape, structural, architectural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, fire protection, and technology construction documents, plans, and drawings. Staff recommendation, motion to approve. Let's get a motion on Amanda and Tom, if you want to come up. Thanks.
All right, I have a terrible voice tonight, so hopefully you can hear me with the microphone. Is that okay?
Yeah, could you both identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Jeff Vine, so I'm the owner's representative for the new senior center project. And this is Mark Cruiser from OPN. So we're gonna have Mark go through some visuals that we have in the packet. We also have some detailed plans. We're moving quickly towards finishing up construction documents. And I thought maybe just quickly before he goes through that, I'll just give you kind of the update of where we are. We've got the documents that you'd see tonight, which are very close to being complete construction documents. We're planning on coming back potentially to have those approved on the 3rd. And then our schedule is wanting us to bid this maybe sometime in December. So we're trying to find a good time frame for that. So we're targeting maybe the 1st of December through the 22nd December. And then our schedule has always been that we would start maybe February, March of this coming year, and we would be completed in July of 2027. So with that, we'll let Mark show you all of the nice stuff that we have in the packet.
Thank you, Jeff. So if you want to scroll down to the first images we have up there.
Mark, could you pull your mic a little closer? Thank
Sure.
you.
How's that? So this was the presentation we gave to the building committee a few weeks ago, and it's kind of like the final design other than completing the construction drawings. And so if you scroll down a little bit to the next image, what we presented was the floor plan development and talked to them about both interior and exterior design. And then we had an animation fly through the interior, and then we talked about next steps with them at that meeting. And so if you go up down to the next plan, we just updated the building committee on the latest plans. There really weren't many changes from what the previous meetings were, what was presented at the previous meetings, just kind of refining areas and things like that. But the largest component of the building is the gymnasium up in the upper left, main entrance kind of at the kind of at the inside corner of the building there, with the lobby. There's cafe, a game lounge, classroom, exercise areas, the main hall, which is kind of meeting space. In that area, then below or to the south, primarily the administrative offices, and then there's the adult day program, the commercial kitchen, and then rear areas where the back corridor for like picking up and delivering the meals program, bringing in supplies and all of those things in that area. So if you want to scroll down a little bit more, we'll talk about the exterior, which is a little easier to read or at least visualize for everybody. So this is kind of the northwest corner of the building, I guess, looking at the taller gymnasium part. And so the building is primarily brick veneer with, this has some translucent material so it'll be lit up and be a very nice, bright, diffuse light at night, which will kind of show off the building, but also internally during the day, it'll bring a lot of daylight into that gymnasium. And then the street to the left there, and you can see that on this north side, it's reasonably close to the street, which is fairly appropriate for the downtown neighborhood. To the right, there's also that grass area that's actually a retention pond, so that'll be mostly planted with prairie type grasses that will want to help infiltrate the water into the soils there. And as we kind of move around the building to the next photo, we're moving around, counterclockwise on the building. So we're moving to our right. And so this is the main entrance that has this large canopy. And on this west side, the canopy goes the full length, and that allows for people to drop off, their spouse or family member, who then comes into the facility, and they can get under the covered walkway. And as we go around to the southwest side of the building, you can see from the other direction that covered walkway leading up to the front entrance, gymnasium to the far left there. And then on the right, we have a larger overhang that is a drive under that will allow us, people to drop their family member off at the adult day program, as well as a loading area for the meals program. You can see in the foreground, there's bike racks and things like that as well. And then as we go to the next image, we're moving around to this, from the southwest side, again, moving to our right to the southeast side of the building. And again, you can see a little bit better the drive-through area for both the ADP program, the adult day program on the left of that large overhang, and then to the right where they can pull under with their van or car and, from the back door of the building, load and unload for the meals program. And then as we continue around to the east side, then now we're up at the northeast side, and there's another retention pond in the center foreground of the picture. On the left, there's screening. You can see the landscape screening for the residential building to the left. There's an outdoor patio there, which is off the game lounge, and then then as you wrap around the north side of the building, there's the exercise area, and then the gym. As the building gets taller, the larger volume of the gymnasium. And so, as you can see, consistently around the building, we're utilizing similar materials and similar patterns with windows and things like that. And I think it's a really nice building at high quality, we think, and something the community can be really proud of. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Amanda?
Yeah, I was just curious, the portico area where people can drive for deliveries, is that gonna accommodate like a box truck, or is it just for vans, and like, will there be like a height thing?
Yeah,
put
we're
so
gonna have
people
to
don't-
put a notice of what the height is so that nobody drives
Okay.
like the UPS truck under there. It's not tall enough for that, but it is
Okay.
that's-
for
for like residential vehicles, like a van or a car
Okay,
or pickup that somebody's, using to deliver the meals
okay,
programs,
thanks.
meals.
Tim?
Can you talk about the outdoor lighting plan?
Sure, so the outdoor lighting, we have a consultant, Doug Gallo, who's senior consultant. He's done a number of these, and he's out of Ohio. And he's been really helpful on some things, and that's one of them that we talked about. And one of the requests he had was to raise the level of lighting, and we actually can't do that and still meet the ordinance. And part of the ordinance, you can have certain light levels, but then if they spill off the property lines, then it doesn't meet the code. If the light levels go to a certain level, then it doesn't meet code, and so we have to bring it back and make sure it meets code. So what we've done is try to highlight some of the areas where there's walkways and things like that, as well as under the canopy, then that'll be brighter too. But at the same time, we're also meeting the ordinance, which I think is also pretty close to meeting the dark sky requirements, and so it's a very responsible lighting plan, we think. So, and then again, under the canopy, which is where people are going from their vehicles to there, that's going to be even brighter, a little brighter, because that's not really site lighting, and so we can increase the foot candles there a little bit for people, elderly people who have in time have less vision or quality of vision, so that will be useful for them.
Anybody else? Questions? Lynn?
We're keeping our questions simply to the exterior design right now? Or is this the entire?
Yeah,
Well,
or do you have?
I guess we do, and we weren't planning on going through it, but I think Lauren could quickly scroll forward. The drawings are in the packet, so if there was specific questions about interior layout or use of spaces or basically anything. I do think, Lynn, that maybe you have a question about geothermal, and I would like to save that for last. I did prepare some information for you, but, so if we could get any other questions, and it could be anything that you can think of, we'll get that out of the way first.
All right, Amanda?
Yeah, I tried to figure out, looking at the plans, the parking lot, are all the entrances also exits? Are they all two-way traffic? And,
Yes,
and
yes,
so
they are.
you have one off Brook Street to the north, and then two entrance, exit points off of, Park Street? Is that
That's
correct?
right.
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to get a sense for how the traffic would flow through and if that makes sense or is confusing, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, and Lauren's just about to that site plan that we could take a look at.
Sorry.
And if you can maybe just zoom out a little bit. So we've got a main entrance off of the Waterman Park Street intersection. And for the most part, that's for staff to get up into the Waterman right away that we took over, so that we've got that extra parking. And then that's kind of the in and out for the business end of things, with people coming in and making those deliveries. But there's also that full entrance for them to get in and out on Park Street. And then there's a full in and out entrance to the north. So you can see that there's a good pathway through the site, for life safety access and just for people being able to get in and out of there.
Thank you.
Lynn and Tim.
Yeah, believe it or not, I have a couple of other questions than geothermal, but thank you for
Sure.
anticipating that need. First question is around the gym. I brought this up the last time we took a look at these interior drawings. Is there a space for seating inside the gym other than pretty much immediately? I think, I can't quite tell. I'm not an expert at understanding layouts, but
Let's start with this. Let's just kind of zoom into that interior corner there, Lauren, where you see that curved area that's actually outside the gym. And maybe just kind of that front vestibule area. And I don't know if you can see that. Maybe we can zoom in even further. But when you come in the front door, you have the opportunity to go straight into the senior center. You have the opportunity to go left, and there's a secure, another door to get into that area.
yeah,
So all along that curved area that's opposite of the restrooms, that's all seating there.
sure,
And that's meant for people that are,
waiting.
maybe waiting, right? There isn't any seating inside the gym, but we do have now, just inside the double doors to the gym, an area where there's a kiosk and a seating area for somebody that would be monitoring or managing what's happening in the gym.
Okay. So let's just say that a senior was on the walking track and needed to take a break. Can they sit somewhere?
Not inside the gym.
Okay. And then my second question, and this is very minuscule, so tell me if I'm just focusing on something that I don't need to focus on, but is the faux sky in the courtyard pictures, is that really gonna happen?
It's a possibility.
Okay. I'm sure it's a very late stage design choice, right? Like, we don't need to talk about it right now or really
Well-
focus on it, but it did catch my eye, this.
Correct, yeah. And so there's clear story glass that you can't see from this direction. So when you look the other direction, you actually see the windows and the actual
Comes down.
light. And this was a design idea to try to turn that space into more of an outdoor space, even though it's not. And, maybe Rachel could talk more about the people that are using that space and that, it's something different and nice for them.
Yep, so that's a courtyard that's designed to be part of the adult day program space. And it's really helpful to have some spaces that feel different, so that if somebody is inside all day, it's really nice to have the option to do something that feels like you're outdoors. And so the walls in there are really tall, and so we found that you could print vinyl to do, to look like a lot of things, including the sky and the stone walls. So that's why it looks like that. It's almost meant to feel a little bit like a recess space or a garden space.
Okay. If there is an important, I mean, the adult day program, there are a lot of nuance to that that I don't know or understand, and so I will take your expertise on that. It was a little surprising to me, but I will defer to the experts in that choice.
I also think that the color on this is a little brighter than what it would probably actually be. I don't
Okay.
think the sky is quite that
That blue.
Yeah,
And-
I think you're right, Rachel, in that. You know, when we originally started, we were trying to figure out how to do a courtyard that was actually outdoor space, but it didn't make sense having it internal to the building. How do you get the snow out of there and things like that? So we ended up putting a roof on it, but with, you know, clear starry windows to bring in a lot of nice daylight. So we brought up, you know, with those tall walls, as Rachel said, we brought up the idea of, you know, could we make it look like the sky? And if, you know, some things are budget driven, so there's a cost to that. If it's not the vinyl, you know, with the clouded sky look, it's probably just gonna be a light blue to look like sky, so. But it's gonna, you know, it's gonna brighten the space up and you know, it's kind of like a back porch kind of theme to that space, you know, that courtyard. You know, we're still calling it a courtyard even though it's enclosed, but it's, again, it's a heated and cooled space.
And there's a lot of time before something actually gets glued on that wall.
Yeah.
So this is the current idea.
Yes, thank you.
In fact, the stone is not, and the stone's not real, it's also a printed vinyl.
Got it.
Tim, I think you're next.
My question was about the courtyard as well. I just wanted to hear what the vision was for that, so
Okay, Amanda?
mine's been answered.
And we didn't go through the interior renderings, but were there any other comments for interior rendering?
Yeah, I had one, and again, I want to defer to experts here, and maybe there was a plan for this, but I looked at I love the color schemes, you know, you walk in and there's the wood and the green and the, you know, the lighting, it's beautiful when you walk in, I really like that. But then I was looking at every other room and they all look the same, and I didn't know if maybe there'd be some different, but also nice color schemes just to mix it up, or if you're trying to get that continuity through every room, or I just feel like you could maybe have some fun with some of the rooms, like maybe the classroom is blue instead of green, or, you know,
Well,
but,
the dining room is blue.
Okay.
And one of the walls that you don't see, the wall, you can see that wall that has the birch panels, the acoustic panels. You were in, keep going down. Nope, other way. There you are. Nope, go back up.
that was,
Right there, Laura.
Oh, that's
So
blue?
There's some
Okay.
acoustic panels there that are wrapped in what looks like birch tree images. The
Yeah, I like
wall that's
that.
opposite that wall, so that room is actually more blue than green, and the wall opposite that you can't see right now because you're standing as though kind of your back is up to it, is actually a darker blue, and the tile in that room is more of a blue than a green. So one of the things we heard from the community when we did community engagement was they wanted the space to be nature inspired. And so we are trying to stick with some of the blues and greens, and then the wood,
sure.
to kind of be consistent with what we heard pretty loud and clear was the preference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the fitness rooms are bright blue, and some of the other areas are different colors. I think you're just getting hit with the main, most
Yeah.
exciting renderings, which happen to be in the front area, which are the green color.
Okay, no, that's good, and maybe it's the color of my computer screen too, or there, because that doesn't look super blue, but I'm sure it is more blue than shown, so that's helpful. I mean, I understand why you did it then, and if that's what the community wants, I'm good with it.
Anybody else? So we move on to the next step. No? Okay, Jeff, yeah.
Geothermal?
Yes, is it okay if I preface this just a little bit so they understand why you're specifically talking about this?
Sure.
So the Sustainability Committee has had a representative at the building meetings, and we haven't touched specifically on any sustainable piece here, but I'm sure Jeff can explain. There are some preparation steps for solar panels. which the Sustainability Committee has been asking about. But then there was also a question about the HVAC systems and what systems would be put into this building at the current iteration that this building plan is at right now. And currently, it does not have a geothermal system built in, but rather a regular HVAC system. And so the Sustainability Committee has been discussing this, and they have a recommendation to the village board. Due to timing, I'm going to read that recommendation because our committee met last week after the agenda was locked. So this recommendation is in 5 points, and I'll read it as the representative and then go back to my role as a village board member. So the first is a recommendation to pause the current planning process to revisit a geothermal plan within the building project. The second is a conversation between the architect, engineer, and owner's rep with local experts about problems such as staging, conductivity, funding sources, and potential solutions for those specific problems. 3, to go back to the engineer of record that was selected to have them engineer the plan around geothermal. 4 is to reconsider the fiscal responsibility of the current plan and how a more sustainable heating cooling system could save money more long-term, a reevaluation of the life cycle cost. And 5 is to evaluate this current building project with the sustainability plan, goals, and resolution that was adopted by the village board in 2023. So I'm going to leave that there, and we've kind of let Jeff and team know about this so that he can kind of address this conversation from his side before the board discusses.
Sure. And so I understand what you had there. And I wanted to go back and just revisit some of the history of kind of how we got to where we are, because I don't know if everybody was here when we had some of the earlier conversations. So I'm going to kind of back up and just go through some history, and then I'll talk specifically about some of the challenges that we have for geothermal, specifically for the senior center project. So for sure, the design team was aware that this was a goal for the village, because both myself and the design team were part of the library project, and we do have geothermal out at the library project. One of the things, well, we did actually study this site for the library site. So again, some of the difficulties with geothermal here, we had already kind of discovered at that time when we were looking at it as a potential library site. And so these are things where we're coming into it and we're kind of already, thinking about what we might be able to do here. And maybe we should have spent more time, exploring that. But in May, so on May 12th, we had a meeting with our design team. It was the first time that we had the MEP engineers, which is the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the fire protection engineers, as part of our design meeting. And we did talk about geothermal, and we did talk through some of the challenges that we had. And after that, again in May, we spent time with village staff and talking again with the engineers, and then looking at the site constraints and going through, and we confirmed with the village staff that we weren't going to include geothermal in either OPN's contract, which the village board approved on May 19th, or in the schematic design when we basically brought a concept, which we brought actually way back in March, which I'm going to talk through some of those drawings. That's why Lauren has those drawings up. But the building was set, the site layout, the phasing was set way back in March. But then in July, we actually came back with schematic design drawings. And in that packet, in the July packet, there was a very detailed description and outline of what the HVAC systems would be for the project. So part of us coming to the village board at concept design and then coming to the board again at schematic design is like, hey, we're moving forward with design. Here's what's happening. We want to make sure that we're in a good position before we move forward with that. And we don't need to look at that now, but if you look at the village board packet from the 7-7 meeting, pages 154 to 157 were that description of what was happening for the HVAC system, again, which did not include the geothermal. And then we came to that meeting, which was that schematic design presentation, and I did spend some time talking about it, and I apologize because we're revisiting it, so we should have spent more time on it. And, and also, you know, we probably should have, understood how we could have maybe engaged the sustainability committee earlier on. Maybe May would have been the time, you know, to do that. So, you know, I do apologize that we didn't do a better job of having them weigh in on that. But we thought that we were checking off at the right points along the way, and we kept moving forward. And again, tonight, the intention actually was on our schedule is we were trying to get tonight to be the night that we were getting the bid documents approved, but we're not quite ready for that yet. But we're not in the middle of design, we're at the absolute end of design at the moment. So I just want that to be the context. But let's back up and let's talk about geothermal on this site. And then if we want to make changes or do something different, then we can talk that through tonight. So the first thing I want to take a look at, if you look at this first concept drawing, which for the most part, you know, other than a few of the things that we've been showing you on the exterior, this layout, including us getting the Waterman Street vacated, pretty much stands. So this was from March of this year. And one of the main things that we've got going on here is we are positioning the building because the gray rectangle that's kind of being bisected by those two pink arrows that are heading towards the building, that's the existing senior center. So we didn't have in an effort to keep the senior center functioning throughout the course of construction, we didn't have a lot of options about where we could put this building. So we landed on this. And so as a result of that, with our entrance off of Brook Street, and you can see one of the bioretention swales that we have next to the gym. We have bioretention at Waterman, and we have some narrow parking on Waterman, and we have some narrow parking at the south end of the building. We really have one big kind of rectangle area, which is that area, that main parking lot where the senior center is. The site that we have here is 2.6 acres. The site that we had for the library is 6.9 acres, and the library and this building are roughly the same square footage. Now, the library is actually a little bit more efficient on the site because it has some two-story element, but for the most part, we're building a same-size facility on 2.6 acres instead of 6.9 acres. The library's geothermal field is 100 feet by about 120 feet, and it's a little bit of an odd shape, but because we had more land out there, we were able to get that field, you know, outside the parking lots, and we had enough area for it. Lauren, if you can scroll to the next image. This was a phasing plan, you know, that we showed you guys at that same meeting. And for this discussion, if you imagine that pink area, really, we could expand it maybe a little bit to the north, but that's about the only area that's available on our site for a geothermal field. And that's roughly maybe the right size that we could figure out how to get enough wells in there for geothermal. You know, we can't be trying to, we couldn't put the wells in and then try to excavate closer to the building. We've got to be a certain distance away from the building. We wouldn't have wells kind of sprinkled all over. They need to be somewhat efficient in an area. So we just, on this site, we don't have a lot of candidates of where we could put those wells. Where those wells would go, if we did decide that we wanted to put them out underneath that large parking lot, they would be in that driveway area. They would be underneath those main drive lanes. They would be under the asphalt, the concrete, the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, all of those things. And it's not that that's not possible. It's just maybe not the best. It's maybe not the best place to put them. And there's a couple considerations for that. You know, not easy to access anything that has to do with the wells or the piping in the future. And then it would be more difficult and I guess a little bit concerning to go in, drill all of those wells that are, you know, whatever they are, 300 to 500 feet deep, depending on what we could get them to design to, and then say, okay, now that we've kind of decimated that area, that's where we're gonna go in and try to put in our new parking lot and drive lanes and everything for the senior center. So it's not that it can't be done, but now we're trying to figure out how to rehabilitate all of that and build that hardscape on top of that new well field. So that's just one thought. And again, maybe that's something that can be surmounted. The other thing that we need to consider is because of the phasing, the size of the site, and where the existing, well, let's just ignore that the existing senior center's there for a while. Let's imagine that that's gone. Even if we were gonna put the geothermal field where that pink area is, we would have to, because we don't have a lot of room on the site, we would have to extend the critical path of the schedule, right? We couldn't find a time where we would be installing those wells parallel to the rest of the critical path for construction. You know, what we want to do with the contractors, we want to get in, dig footing, start the structure. There's a critical path that gets you to the day that you move in. To put the well field in, because we don't have anywhere to work or store or have staging for materials or any of those things, we would basically just kind of have to either stop the project at some point to put the well field in and extend the schedule, or we would more probably, we would do that first, and then we would continue with the critical path of the project, again, extending the schedule. So there's two schedule issues I want to speak to. One of them is extending the schedule. And so I think going in there, putting in the wells, putting it back together and getting it back to where we could get back on our normal construction path, maybe that's a 2-month extension in the overall schedule. And that just costs money.
I was just gonna say, how much does that cost?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
So there's a schedule extension, meaning we're inserting into the critical path, we're making it longer. The other problem that we have on this project is we have schedule timing problem, which we have right now today, and I'll explain that. In Wisconsin, you see construction happens all the time, 12 months out of the year. You never don't see construction happening. And it isn't so much when you start construction, but there's specific times that you don't want to end construction or that you can't end construction. And that would be in December, January, February, and March. So what we're up against on this project with the schedule that we have right now is we want to be able to start the project. We need to get phase 1A, which is the main senior center project, done and able to be occupied by the spring of 2027. To be able to do that, we can't install asphalt or curb and gutter or sidewalk in December or January. Asphalt plants close in Wisconsin, before Thanksgiving. So we need to have the site built for a project that's gonna open in the spring. We have to have that site built in November of the year previous. So in November of 2026, we have to be a certain, we need to be far enough along on our schedule to be able to build that site so that in March, which is what we're talking about, of 2027, we could actually occupy the building, demo the old senior center. We've got to finish the parking lot where the senior center is, and there's a phase 2B, which is actually now a separate project, village project for reconstruction of Park Street that also needs to get started early in that year. So if we were to delay either in redesign or inserting thermal well field into the schedule now, we're also going to shift the schedule, which means occupancy goes from potentially March of 2027 to like June, because we have to wait now until like May and June to do that exterior work instead of doing it in the fall of the previous year. So does that make sense that there's an overall lengthening of the schedule, and then if we shift it, it gets worse and more efficient? So something to consider. So then, the other thing that we need to go back to is that we do have the existing senior center there. So that senior center is going to stay operating all the way until March of 2027, which, if we're talking about starting in March of 2026 or February 2026, if we can get somebody out there and get going, that's 12 months that the existing senior center is going to be operating while we're building the new building. So to me, at this point, the geometry problem becomes impossible to be able to put a geothermal well field in at any course in construction in time to, one, have the site built before it needs to be built, and two, that, that geothermal field needs to be in well before we get around to finishing HVAC and being able to occupy the building. Now, we did talk if we back up from this, which again, we approved this in March, if we backed up from this, there was discussion of a different site layout. There was discussion of, temporarily relocating the senior center. We could buy or rent a space, we could renovate, we could move, we could try to do services out of that temporary space. But I think the main, for obvious reasons, the main thing that came out of any of that was, let's try, no matter what, to keep the existing senior center operating. So, and I think it's really gonna be fairly smooth. If we're only down for a month or so with operations, it would be a great success, right? So I don't think so much that it's a HVAC question, and I know that there's the long-term sustainability. We'd love to have geothermal, but it's not an HVAC engineering. There's lots of other things that kind of go into it, and there's some cost here too that go along with it. But so, what else are we trying to do here? Because we knew kind of early on we weren't going to be able to do that, and we knew that was going to be disappointing. But, we do have other things that we're trying to do. We're setting up 2 alternates that we're going to bid, where we're going to have a bunch of solar PV, and then we're going to maybe have a whole bunch of solar PV, depending on how things happen when we bid those alternates. One of the things that's happening here is we're taking what was, for the most part, a concrete parking lot. All of these sites, including the Waterman Street right-of-way, were basically just a stormwater, there was no stormwater management. There certainly was no stormwater treatment. And we're taking all of that now, and we're providing green infrastructure, and we're managing that stormwater on-site as much as possible before it has to leave the site, which I think is a huge improvement. And then, part of that landscaping and those renderings certainly aren't very representative, where we show the green grass where the bioretention soils go. It would be better to go out and see the library, where all of those areas are going to become, that natural habitat, and it's going to be kind of a landscaping oasis in the downtown. So there's something there that we're focusing on. The other thing that's happening here is our high quality exterior materials. We had some budget pinches with the library because of timing and inflation and COVID and all kinds of other pestilence that happened during that time frame. And we have asphalt shingles on that project, and we have some hardy material, those things that are going to be significant maintenance items in the future. But that's where we landed on that project. On this project, we don't have those type of exterior long-term maintenance costs, which also lends a little bit to future operating and sustainability. And then, of course, in the building, we have LED lighting and lighting controls, and we have water-saving plumbing fixtures, and we have, other things that the engineers are doing to try to be responsible inside the building. So, there is that. And then the other thing that I just want to mention is that to me, this is extraordinary, what we're doing with this facility. So as we kept getting into design, even myself, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that this is all the things that we're trying to do here. It's not just a hangout for seniors. The fitness program stuff, the adult day program, I had, no idea how extensive that is. The spaces that we have for caseworkers to do counseling for medical and mental health, and, things like the medical equipment, all of those things. The teaching classroom, we have this in-house dining facility that can feed people that come in, and then a really nice commercial kitchen with a mobile meal service for the community, and then we have this community gym on here. So somebody's mentioned about Wanakee has a pretty nice senior facility. I know what's in Wanakee. what Wanakee has isn't a quarter of what we're talking about doing here as far as the services and the types of things that we have in the building. So I think it's just, we're maybe repurposing something that was a goal, but we're shifting it, you know, to some other things, and we're trying to do the best that we can with the site that we have. And then just for the last food for thought, so if we were to go back and redesign, you know, it's maybe $50,000 worth of going back and reworking on HVAC design. We've got to have $25,000 worth of conductivity testing for the wells to be able to go out there and figure out what to do. I think that there's easily 2 months in a construction schedule of this is worth, you know, maybe $100,000 in GCs. Same thing with the schedule shift. That could maybe be potentially a $100,000 thing if we're looking at another extension because of that efficiency. There's probably $400,000 just in the cost of the well field. I did go back and look at the library cost. I think that maybe what we have budgeted for HVAC inside the building would be similar, but the actual well field itself is, for the most part, an additive cost. So, you know, all of that adds up to not quite $700,000. And then, you know, I would just be worried about, again, with the library, we didn't stay on schedule, and then we started chasing costs. So if we were to take time out and we were gonna move this, and we quite possibly might have to shift it an entire year with all the sequencing that we've been talking about, you know, we would be looking at the escalation that would go along with that. So I think the main point was to try to take those dollars and focus some other places versus what we know is an important goal for the village.
Okay. Lynn, please.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I'm going to speak as myself now, and I want that to be very clear. The thing I was hoping I would hear that I haven't heard, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong. I really want a geothermal expert to tell us that it is not possible to do this in the phased way that we want to do this. I respect and honor your experience and the time that you guys have put into this, and the fact that you did it at the library, right? You're not new to this. This is not unknown to you. But I feel like I don't, as a board member, have enough to tell me that this isn't possible. I don't know if it takes some creative thought about looking at, I mean, I know you can't go too far off site, but like north, we have Kaiser, we have that property as well. I just, to me, this is a once in a generation building. This is a building that I need it to last 50 to 100 years. And in 50 to 100 years, if someone looks at me and says, why is this not this way? I want to know that I did everything. I kind of equate it to, I was just telling someone the other day, when I see a building that's not ADA compliant, that blows my mind, that we have buildings that are not ADA compliant. How could you possibly have done that? That was what was done at the time. We know better. And in 30 years, when we are literally cooking on this planet, I don't want someone to look back at this building and wonder why we didn't. I'm not saying that we have to. I'm not saying that it's a green light, red light thing for me as a village board member. I'm just saying that I really feel like having some very specific voice to say, yes, this is not possible. The way you want to do it is just not possible, or it would be so incredibly difficult to do. I totally understand your thing about timing, but again, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to years and years and years of this building being in existence, that's a trade-off I don't know that I can remedy in my mind. Those are just my thoughts, though, and I'm happy to defer. I also totally understand your point about we are way late in this game, and that is unfortunate. I just feel like there are holes for me in terms of this decision.
Amanda?
Yeah, I have a question kind of related. I totally am where Lynn, is, I mean, if this building is gonna be around a long time, I feel like it's important to do everything that we can. But I'm not an engineer, I don't know the answers to these questions, so I was wondering, I would assume that it's possible, maybe not cheap, but it's possible to retrofit with a geothermal if, like, let's say, for example, just throwing it out as an idea to put the geothermal under like the park, Kaiser Park or whatever to the north and hook it up later. I don't know if that's doable or is that just not possible? Help me
Well,
out here.
It's maybe not that it's not possible, but the HVAC that's designed now for the senior center would not accept that. So
Okay.
we're dealing with different types of units than would be accepting and rejecting water, whether it's coming from a cooling tower or a loop in the ground. So there would, the HVAC inside the building would also have to be redesigned.
And it's generally in the floor, is that what I'm
It's on the
understanding?
ceiling, I think.
Yeah,
It's on
how
the
does,
ceiling, isn't it?
where
also have
would it?
baseboard heat around the perimeter, so especially like windows and that, so there is heating with, water, and that's very, that's probably one of the easiest things to hook up geothermal to, but it's more of the equipment that are in the mechanical rooms that, would have to be, taken out, the boiler and air handlers and stuff that would get replaced.
Yeah, what's coming from the geothermal wells is just a certain temperature of medium, right? So
Right.
we can use that water loop to either reject heat into it or we can, use it to cool. So whether that comes from a boiler or a cooling tower or something else that changes the temperature of that water that's circulating, or whether it's coming from the ground, but all the equipment inside is based on having that water circulating through it. And right now, we don't have those types of units. We're talking about, gas-fired heating units that are sitting on the roof and other things that wouldn't accept that type of water.
I'm gonna use Madison as an example because we've done some sustainable buildings for Madison. Recent one is the Fire Station 14, which is on the southwest side of Madison on Dairy Drive, which is a LEED Platinum building. And it's, now that they've added more PV to it, it's net zero, it also has geothermal. But in the conversation with them, they had just recently remodeled their city hall. And I know you're not as big as Madison, but still, I think it has this argument has some merit for you as well in the Village of Oregon. So they realize that they can't make every one of their facilities net zero, at least they don't have the roof space, or they, they're an urban building, they can't add the geothermal without going out into the public street or something. But they said if they could someday, the buildings that they can add to, that energy that's producing, like on a PV roof on that, if it's more than that fire station uses, it can benefit the city, even if it's just going back to the grid or whatever. Or they could always add, like a solar field or anything like that too. So there are options to not trying to make every single building net zero, and still you could achieve those goals, the long-term goals of that. So it's something to think about, another way to think about the problem here.
Jeff, you had mentioned something just a minute ago, and I want to clarify. You said the HVAC system would be on the roof, but isn't it like between the roof and the ceiling?
There's some condensers that are on the roof. We have mechanical mezzanines that are within the building where most of
Yeah,
the equipment
okay.
is, right, correct.
Yeah. And then if you were to fully build out the solar, would that be would it be enough to generate for the entire building and as Mark suggests, send back some to the grid, or no, unknown?
I think so. We're having those two alternates. They're finishing them as part of the final electrical design right now. And I know these numbers don't mean anything to you, but if we had an 80 kW system, that would be similar to what's at the library. And we're talking about if with the second alternate, would we be double that? And so it probably would serve the building, and then it would be a net producer if we were to accept both of those alternates.
All right, thank you. Who's next? Rick?
Can you tell me how long what the lifespan is of the HVAC system that you'd be installing? If we wanted to try and readdress this as the system ages out?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but it's a long time. You know, it's supposed to be there for 30, 40 years before you're really replacing things kind of wholesale.
And you said something about this being gas-fired. What's the delivery system for actually getting heat and cooling in the building? Is that hydronic? Is it water? Or how do you actually, forced air? What's the system?
It's a hybrid system, so it has forced air for both heating and cooling, air circulation. And then it has hydronic at the perimeter baseboard heat, so that you have that comfort in the winter. And it's not just forced air so that it, it's chilly over by the windows and warm, toward the middle of the room. And so that's why we, in a typical building like this, in this type of system with both, gas, fuel, and electric, we typically put perimeter baseboard heat. And again, that's hydronic, it's coming from a boiler.
And maybe there's a couple different kind of normal everyday HVAC systems, right? So in typical homes in Oregon, it's probably a forced air furnace that has a gas-fired furnace, and then you've got a condenser outside. That's very similar to what the main air handling of the senior center would be. There are the baseboard water heat and other things and electric heat in certain areas that you can understand, but that forced air heat is very much like a residential home system. The other thing is called a heat pump, which that's the geothermal, where it's the same kind of thing. It's moving air, but instead of either a condenser cooling it or gas firing it and heating it up, it's using that water loop to heat and cool with, but very similar. It's, those big units pushing air around the building.
One other question. You mentioned drilling. Have you looked at the horizontal directional drilling rather than vertical drilling? Would that make any difference in the ability to be able to work around some of these scheduling issues?
Well, the wells are extremely deep. So the only possible way that we could get wells, if we weren't going to the north and doing something else with some property somewhere else, is that they need to be vertical, because maybe there's 6 feet, from one well to the next, but those wells are going down 300 to 500 feet. I think the ones at the library are like 400 feet deep. So to get enough loop in the ground, you really gotta go. Where if we were trying to do something horizontally, it would be too widespread.
Are soils an issue in this equation, or not really?
No, I actually learned that the soil with the water, with a higher water table in it, is actually more conductive.
Okay.
So it's not a bad thing, other than there's cost and considerations when they're putting the wells in to make sure that they can deal with that. But
Yeah.
long-term, the conductivity is actually better.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. So one could choose to amend that, offer an amendment, if they wanted to change the approval. Amanda?
Yeah, okay. Like, I really want to make this work. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking about our budget and I'm trying to figure.
But, well, from what I know, the federal government has not touched yet the federal reimbursement money for geothermal systems. They have obviously reduced or made changes to the solar reimbursement, but that the geothermal, but again, as I stand here today, could that change tomorrow? Yes.
Okay. Lynn?
I'll put an amendment to the motion to approve this plan to engage with a geothermal company, I believe, and I don't remember, HGA? Is HGA a company that was used for the library discussions?
So we have the same HVAC consultant on this project as we did for the library, IMEG. It's an acronym, IMEG.
Did they
IMEG.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I'll say, just to engage a geothermal specialized engineer company to address the concerns and provide potential solutions for geothermal on this site or near this site, for this site.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Second by Amanda. Discussion. Tom?
I guess, do you have we're approving the plan, but then are you suggesting additional activity? Are you putting a time frame that we would expect that we would get this response back in relationship to? What would be a reasonable time frame to ask this kind of question?
Well, I guess I would want to, I think we better really understand what you're asking for, because I'm telling you, I think we're talking about significantly delaying the start of this project. So I don't think this is about finding some funding for $700,000. I think it's about, we're talking about this project pushing like a year. And is that what we're talking about tonight?
Yeah,
That was my question.
Yeah, I
So,
would say
like,
if this amendment,
But, you know,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think the two things are not, they don't work together. Approving the plan and what's being asked here, you're saying pause the plan right now with what you're asking.
Yeah.
So
So
it
I'm
sounds
not
like,
amending, I'm
sound-
doing a new motion.
we could talk about that,
Well-
but yeah.
We have a motion on the table. And so you're saying you're not amending? You're
Yeah,
great.
it doesn't sound like it would be possible or logical to amend that motion.
Right,
So I'll
Well-
rescind that amendment,
okay,
if that's
I'm
possible.
okay with rescinding it.
all right, well, you want to vote on the main motion first?
It's up to you guys.
No, I'm asking Larry.
Like
I
procedure.
think that's the way to proceed.
It's on the floor, so.
Yeah, and then after that, we get an additional. That's correct. Okay, got that?
If that motion fails,
Then you can make it.
If it fails, yeah.
Can you read the motion again, just so that we're all clear about
Sure.
what?
Get comfortable?
Oh.
No, I don't mind. I hope I didn't sound that way. Okay, presentation review of the Oregon area senior center and community gymnasium project design developments, documents including site plan, demolition plan, grading, erosion control plan, utility plan, landscape plan review, civil, landscape, structural, architectural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, fire protection, technology, construction documents, plans, and drawings. Staff recommendation motion is to approve design development documents as presented and authorize proceeding with finalizing construction documents for future board review and potential action. So, let me just consider here for a moment. I think we have a motion on the floor. I believe we need to vote on that. Am I consensus?
I have a motion by Peterson and a second by Kirschdorfer to approve the design development documents as presented
Okay.
and authorize proceeding with final construction.
Does that, I'm sorry, does that present an avenue for a trustee to then delay or modify?
I think if the motion fails, certainly then any motion
Sure.
can be made. If the motion is approved, it would be, there should be, probably be some more discussions about what, as Martin said, what would conflict with what you've already approved. You could always, yeah, there, and maybe some of that discussion, if people are satisfied with the answer we've gotten in terms of the delay, you're probably ready to vote if there's no more discussion. But otherwise, adopting two inconsistent motions
Yeah,
would be-
right, yeah.
would be troublesome for
Yeah.
staff and for consultants.
Okay, so go ahead, Amanda. It looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, I just, so we're gonna vote on whether we're gonna approve and proceed or vote against the approving and proceeding and then think about what we might want to do next.
Yep, that's,
Okay.
that's correct.
Just so I understand. And then I really don't know how I'm gonna vote yet. I'm still trying to figure it out because honestly, I don't want to hang up this project. That's not the goal. We've been working towards this for a long time. And I just, I'm struggling with that, but at the same time, the bigger picture weighs very heavily on me. And I don't know. I'm still deciding, but Jeff had something he wanted to say if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Well, I just thought maybe we should just talk about schedule one more time before we, you know, because, well, I guess I'll just think it through here. So, because it isn't just, let's think about what we're gonna do next, and maybe we're gonna figure something out in a month or two, and we're gonna totally change course, and we're gonna go down a different road. Because the construction documents, which are, since we submitted design development documents, the construction documents are pretty much done. So on the 31st, those are being given to the city or to the village as a completed product, right? And then the idea was that we were coming back on the 3rd of November to have those approved to be bid. And then we have a short window, you know, in December that we could bid it and stay on schedule. Otherwise, we're gonna get into that, you know, shift and delay and everything else. So we're either talking about staying on schedule or significantly getting off schedule. There is no, we're gonna take a month. So I just wanna make sure that it's clear that it's a significant shift because we're losing this moment that we have to launch all the sequencing at the right moment.
Tom and then Lynn.
Okay, first off, I guess, at this point, I'm sort of kind of where Amanda is I'm still uncertain on what I'm going to do in a few minutes. But my first thoughts are, as we have people who are experts who have done a lot of work to try to create a highly efficient building within the design limitations that they face on this particular site, and the scheduling and the timing and all the other elements that we go into. So I have to respect their knowledge. And am I going to get a lot of new information in having another or having a relook at geothermal? Maybe we should have looked at it harder earlier on or gotten a clearer answer earlier on. But I don't see that I'm going to get an answer in a short time of frame that won't significantly delay this project as much as a year. And I guess the year delay to me is just too much for me to back away from at this point. So it's kind of I'm still kind of struggling. You know, we want to have an efficient building. We want to have one that works well. Using this, you know, if we can say, let's spend more time and more effort on getting the solar and getting that up and really push that, you know, that creates an opportunity for supporting the goal of moving towards zero. You know, our goal is to be zero carbon. It's not to have geothermal in every building. It's to get to being as efficient and as effective as we can. Geothermal is one alternative system, but it's not the only way to be efficient, I guess, and that's sort of where I'm leaning right now.
Okay, Lynn.
Yes, Tom, but I would also say to your point, I mean, by putting a fossil fuel driven HVAC system that's going to last 30 to 40 years, you are going to have carbon. Like, it's not a carbon, it can be a very efficient building. But at the end of the day, it will use or have some carbon pieces to it. That's not why I raised my hand. I'm so sorry. Quick question for you. If, let's just say in the world of rainbows and butterflies, the geothermal could potentially happen, how much redesign of the actual building itself would have to happen?
I think the HVAC equipment inside the building for the most part could be adjusted without, it's not like we're moving walls or
Okay,
putting the classroom where the fitness room is.
okay, thank you. I don't know those things, so that's helpful. So ultimately, it's changing the phasing, the site plan itself, but the actual, like, the building that we just looked at.
Well, it's changing what's been designed for over 12 months worth of work is what it's changing, unfortunately.
Amanda?
Okay, so another question, would we, sorry, are you trying to get in here?
I do have a question too, but it's
Okay, okay.
probably not.
Sorry, Tim, I can't.
Okay,
I
yeah,
say
he'll,
that.
you can
I've
be
been
next.
hesitant to ask it, so go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking, is there a way to make it so we're not using directly anyway, fossil fuels? Like, do we have to have a gas boiler or could we make it electric so that it might work off the solar panels?
We did talk about more electricity, but maybe the efficiency of that at this point is not what you would want it to be either. And we actually discussed that, I think, is Mark here? And I guess you can't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the thoughts was that, things are gas-fired now, but in the future, when that efficiency gets there, maybe the boiler is electric and we do have the PV and maybe more things in the building can go electric. So, we maybe there's maybe this opportunity for geothermal right now, but there's opportunity in the future for who knows how these things are gonna change and be able to be improved in the future.
That's helpful. Thank you. Okay.
Are you ready?
All right, where I'm struggling with all of this is, I understand, we've had some approvals along the way in March and in July, but I don't think it was ever clear to me that we were taking geothermal off the table when we made those approvals. Is that a fair statement?
I apologize that we weren't clear enough with what was happening and maybe the, discussions with staff, we kind of knew what we were doing, but we should have spent more time on that with the board. I agree with that.
Okay.
And just to add, I know Jeff mentioned it too, the systems were explained in the documentation that was provided in those meetings. So these systems were out there and put in the packets for people to read and be aware of. Now, whether they got drawn attention to the specific pieces of them or not, or if you were able to read them all thoroughly, obviously that's, for everybody to do.
Amanda?
One last comment. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. And I just want a moment to explain before I vote, before people are like, what are you doing? I think I'm probably gonna move forward on this, okay? And I understand the concerns and the desire for geothermal. I do think that technology is always changing. It's always possible that something better than geothermal will happen and something cheaper and better and who knows, right? And I think I have to trust that you guys have made a concerted effort to try to make it happen and it just wasn't. And also, in light of our budget considerations, if we had money to play with, the timeline change does not bother me, the added expense, but we don't have money to play with. We are under crazy budget constraints. We don't have time to apply for a government grant for geothermal that would help pay for it because, we all know that would move quickly. And anyway, there's too many other pressures that we have. So I'm landing on the side of moving forward and doing everything we can to be as efficient as possible, doing everything we can to eliminate the use of fossil fuels. And, the more solar we have, the better. That would help and, pay back out to the grid. And, I think we can only do what we can do with the information that we have. So that's kind of where I am.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion by Amanda, a second by Tom, and to clarify, this is a motion basically to approve the design documents presented tonight and proceed on the planned schedule. Okay? All right, again, a motion by Amanda, second by Tom. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that's 6-1.
6-1 is what I got, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Jeff
Martin,
and
did you
Mark.
want to, is there any time that we want to spend on the budget or?
Yeah, sure.
What's that?
He's asking if you guys want to hear about the budget or not, if that's what you want to continue.
Absolutely. I mean,
Sure.
is that on the agenda or?
Yeah, it's in the.
Okay.
It was in the packet.
All
So I
right.
just want, before I leave,
Yep.
because I do want to go home, but,
Don't we all?
and I guess I want to say thank you and sorry at the same time for that vote. I appreciate that. So in the packet, what we have in there is a two-page kind of overall development budget. It includes in that, I'll wait till Lauren gets there because this will probably be a short discussion.
What page are we looking for here?
It's at the end of all these pesky drawings.
I just want to add too, there are other things about the building that are sustainable, just, building downtown on an existing site is sustainable. It's in a walking neighborhood, there's a lot of positives about it, so don't beat yourselves up because it's not, maybe not day one, it's not
137, Lauren.
net zero, but.
One more page, I'm almost there.
Once you start scrolling, don't stop scrolling.
There you go.
Okay, we can't read it. All right, perfect. So all this is the best guess as Rachel and I are going through things and I'm talking with the designers and we're trying to anticipate costs that we're gonna have for the project and not all the costs are gonna be in the GC bid. So we've had things like, we're gonna have some geotechnical testing and there was some, we've already had the demolition costs come in. One of the costs tonight was the relocating of the Alliant Energy poles in the center of the site. So we're trying to budget for all of those items. And then if you scroll down to the second page, there is a large number there, which is the current design development. If you go to kind of the top of that page and scroll in on that $19 million number, or zoom in, sorry. We have a consultant that's done estimating for us at the schematic design level, which at that point we were over where our target wanted to be. And then, went through and made some smart decisions. And this estimate now is from the design development drawings, which are the ones, that we approved here tonight. There's a contingency. There's some extra money there for extra solar PV, but it's those numbers that are the construction numbers that will go to the general contractor. But then there's the rest of the numbers that are on this spreadsheet from top to bottom that gets you to the total cost. So I just want to make sure that, we're aware of what the total impact is. The timing and the borrowing for it has all, been worked out. It doesn't happen, it happens over time, but at least you have this information. So if there's any questions on that tonight.
I'll just add that the capital improvement plan and the budget that we've worked on for, last 6 months is based on what is here. So what you've seen in terms of debt analysis and impacts on property taxes, that was based on what's provided here in the packet. So I guess in addition to kind of the, speaking on the pause and or going back and doing some different changes, not only would there be kind of a tumbling back, 6 to 12 months on that, we would also undo 6 to 12 months of capital and debt planning that we would have to revisit entirely to address that as well, so.
Lynn?
I have a quick question. The solar panels, we're gonna bid separately. Did I hear that? Jeff?
Yeah, so here's what we're doing, and I know it's confusing, but you have to kind of trust me. So we've set the
I'm with you.
building up where it's the service and everything about the building is ready to receive the panels. The question is about how many panels and where are they gonna go? And we want that to be a little bit, scalable. So the base bid of the project is set up to receive the panels, and that's in the base bid. There's an estimated cost also in that number for a certain amount of PV. And then that other $100,000 would be another alternate on top of that. So it'll just be how when we bid it out, maybe on bid day, when we come to approve the bid, we'll select base bid plus 2 alternates, or maybe 1, or, however we shake that out.
Right, so because I'm seeing that line, it's like line 71. So basically what we're seeing here is that we have budgeted it, what we guess it, not only are we building for it in the actual frame of the building,
Correct.
in the budget of this overall building, we are budgeting for some of it, but we'll bid it out separately. And so that number may change, but we are anticipating it in our costs.
Correct. Alternate number one, like the first chunk of solar,
Yeah,
is in the $19 million number. The second chunk is the 100. So it's three things. We've designed the building to
Sure.
receive. We have chunk one in the construction number, and then we have budgeted for more.
okay.
Now, at the end of the day, if that bid comes back and it's 23 million, we're gonna be all in here trying to figure out what's going on. But
Okay,
I'm hoping that Martin and I have this all budgeted correctly.
okay, thank you.
And I'll just add the CIP is inclusive of that 100,000 number too.
Great.
So right now, assuming that everything kind of comes in where we think all of this whole thing is listed right now, that's how we've set up our CIP and where you've seen the impacts on debt, property taxes.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions before we move on? Because we already voted on this, so.
Oh yeah, this doesn't need a vote.
I mean, I'll entertain questions if we still have them, but, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much
Thank
for the
you.
discussion.
Thanks, Jeff.
Apologies to the Sustainability Committee, but,
Can I just make a quick comment? Am I allowed to do that or no?
sure.
I think it's important to understand that the Sustainability Committee sees themselves as a partner to the village. We aren't on the opposite side of the table here. We can understand that these things are multifaceted. There's budget, there's timing, there's things like that. I think the thing that we are struggling with as a committee is that this board adopted a resolution to be carbon neutral by 2050, and the actions that this board takes indicate to the Sustainability Committee the direction in which this village wants to go. And so we're getting some mixed messages in terms of, yes, we want to meet these goals, we've made this resolution, but no, we don't actually plan to do that here. And while there are obviously some potential down the road remedies to this, this is a pivotal moment in the village making a decision. And I have no ill will, nor would the committee have any ill will to this decision. I just think that if the village board wants to be more specific to the Sustainability Committee as to how they should move forward, feel free to give that feedback to us. We will continue to do the work that we do and provide the recommendations, hopefully earlier than this one. But we are all on the same team, and we all want to be on the same team here.
Well said.
Yeah, I guess then if I can, or not.
Go ahead.
I just think it's important that if we have a resolution like that, where we've decided we want to be carbon neutral, and we're making a decision that is maybe different from that, we should be calling that out specifically at the time we're making that decision. I understand all of the ramifications around it, but it should be called out. And I'm responsible for reading the packets and understanding the information in there. I accept that responsibility. But I think when we're deviating from a strategic imperative, we should say, hey, we're having to make an exception here, and here are the reasons why, so that it's an informed decision, not now that it's too late to really change it without creating all these other hassles, it's a problem. That would be my preference going forward, that would be part of the way we work.
If I could add a couple things here. So the sustainability plan and the net zero resolution don't mandate these things.
Okay.
They don't say geothermal is required. They say that we will look at it, we will analyze it when we make decisions of significance. And so obviously that leaves it open towards the village board, which is the ultimate authority for making these decisions, to weigh those things, right? Which is what you've done here and what you've done along the way. You've had a building committee that was created. It has a member of the sustainability committee on it. They've been meeting. They've met 5 or 6 times this year since April or March. There was a direction within that resolution that created that committee that said that they should consider the sustainability plan. And they've incorporated many elements of the sustainability plan into the project. And then they had an evaluation of the geothermal component. But there's nothing in those plans that mandates. I mean, if it said geothermal was required, well, we would have probably had a pretty open, thorough conversation about that probably about 12 months ago. But it says that we will consider it and we will trade off the different things and nuances of all of these decisions. So that's what the committee, the building committee certainly proceeded with. That's what staff, that's what the consultants proceeded with, that understanding. So there wasn't a mandate, right? And so if that is a change in policy, then that needs to come from the village board, and we need to understand that clearly.
Can I ask a question?
Well, we'll have a little more of this discussion, but not much. Go ahead.
I just had a question whether, did the village board pass a resolution saying that we wanted to be net zero by 2050? That is something, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That wasn't just a recommendation from the committee, because I don't remember specifically doing it. I'm on board, okay, thank you.
Everybody
I'm
good?
comfortable everybody acted in good faith here, so.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't mean to imply anything else.
Okay, moving on. Thank you all. Item B, 8B, review and authorize requests for proposals for police department staffing and operational study. Staff recommendation and motion to approve. Tim and Tom. Wants to speak to this?
I can speak to this. All right, so we've talked about this a few times here over the last couple of months about proceeding with this study. And when we talked about it at the last meeting, the board directed staff to put together an RFP for this study. And that's what we have done here, and is prepared to be authorized for publishing.
Okay, questions? Anything to add, Chief?
Sorry, I'll just keep it minimal because I'm coughing a lot. But no, Martin shared this with me prior to this meeting, and I really appreciate all his work in it. It's well written. And I gave a little bit of feedback, not much. And no, I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Anyone? All right, thank you, Chief. We have a motion by Tim, a second by Tom. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 8C, explore potential future cooperation, consolidation of fire protection and emergency medical services with nearby municipalities, including the cities of Fitchburg, Verona, and other interested parties. I will read the complete motion. Directing the village president, village administrator to continue discussions with the city of Fitchburg and Verona and other interested parties to further assess the feasibility and mutual interest in cooperation and consolidation of fire protection and emergency medical services, and to report back to the village board on potential next steps. I will make that motion. Second by Amanda. Questions, comments, concerns? Lynn?
I really liked this memo. I thought it was really well done. Curious question. We are our own entity. We are allowed to have discussions, upon our direction. What does this mean for us, though, in our district? Do we need to let our district know? Is that the right way to do that? Tell me about how we navigate that.
So every municipality is responsible for how it provides fire protection, emergency medical services to its community. There's obviously just different arrangements that you can do it under. We obviously have a joint district. We have an arrangement with other municipalities to have a district model. But certainly you could have a village-led department, or you could contract out, or you could, in some communities, have privatized services. Every community has the ability to seek out and decide how it wants to provide those services. I would say for the purposes of this, I think we would want to engage with our communities that are within that district, obviously. And hopefully they would see the benefit of potentially maybe something larger, if that proves to be true. I think in my mind, and maybe Phil, you can respond to this too, I think this is everybody, in my opinion. I think we have to have these conversations with everybody, and hopefully everybody will move together.
And I have actually met with each of the town chairs to apprise them of this. And I would say, without exception, they were open to the ideas. Now, I spoke only to the town chairs. I don't know how their boys are going to respond, but at least they've been informed, and I felt the feedback was positive. And as you say, they're our partners, and will keep them ongoing, keep them informed. Okay. Other questions, Tim?
Just a couple of comments. One, there was a point about the possibility of certain assets being shared in this sort of consolidated environment, and the ladder truck was specifically called out in the memo. One of the things I hope we'll keep in mind as we kind of go down this path, and I support us going down this path, is that ladder trucks tend to respond slower to begin with. And when we've had ladder truck responses within the district, it's shown up on average, I think it was 12 and a half minutes after the other firefighters, because it's coming from a longer distance. So cost is not the only component to that, and I hope we keep that in mind. But a point I hadn't thought about until I saw it in the memo here, is the staffing challenges and not competing with our neighbors for firefighters, I think is a great point, and why this is, one reason why this is worthy of consideration. So I share Lynn's point that this is a really good memo.
Thank you. Amanda?
The only comment I had is that I want to make sure we're not just doing this because there's a grant available. I see long-term benefits, but at the same time, there's costs involved, and this grant, it is only reimbursing 25% of the total costs of providing these duty transfers and all that. So that means we bear 75% of whatever the cost is to consolidate. And I don't know what that is yet. We don't know. I'm on board with proceeding to figure those out. But, I don't want us to just look at consolidating just because there's a grant out there that would give us some money. So just keeping that in mind.
I will respond, and maybe Martin would have something. The idea behind consolidation is, certainly you're making a good point. There will be costs, there will be consultants, and back and forth in committee meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And Martin and I thought if we were lucky, we could do this in 3, and maybe it'd be 5 years. But the idea is to not reduce costs, because the costs aren't going to go down, but as Martin likes to put it, they would go like that, but consolidation's more like this. So it will slow the growth, is the best we can hope for. And it's a long-term, it calls for long-term thinking. While there will be upfront cost, long-term there should be, especially when you're approaching $500,000 for an ambulance. You can imagine just the apparatus alone, there could be substantial savings. So, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think, if you read up on consolidations, I think generally the things that I've sort of gathered from it is, as Phil said, there's sort of a certain trajectory of costs that you can expect, and consolidation sort of helps stunt that. Maybe doesn't help reduce costs by any means, but helps to kind of control costs. The place where you may make up some costs is on those capital items, where you're able to distribute those larger ticket cost items across the greater tax base and more communities and that sort of thing. The innovation grant just happens to be kind of a cherry on top right now. It's just a new program. It's come out recently. It's time limited. I think you only get it for a couple of years once you get it. It's also new, and we don't really know exactly how it works in practice at this point, because nobody's ever had it before. But it's certainly something that's out there, and obviously something the state is pushing in terms of consolidation, and they're trying to incentivize it as much as they can.
Okay. Anybody else? Tom?
Guess from a, just as we experience now, it's, we're always better with more information. We don't know what the alternatives are. We don't know what's even possible. And this is an information gathering exercise. No one's committing to anything. We haven't decided to do any kind of action here other than gather more information. I think it would be remiss if we didn't do that.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, motion by the chair, second by Amanda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. If you'd like to read more about consolidation, I have many links I can send you. Let's see, 8D, review draft 2026 village budget, and I think we'll stop right there.
All right, Lauren's gonna switch screen over to me here. There we go. Close that, so I get notifications. All right. Over there.
She's getting there.
Good, over there. All right, so budget. So we had the first, I guess, real budget meeting at the last village board meeting. And so have the same budget document, draft budget document in the packet. Obviously, we've compiled the budget, we've compiled this budget document. And really at this point, we are in quality control, just double checking and triple checking numbers. Nothing has really changed since the last meeting in terms of the budget. Made some edits to the budget document itself, some different edits and little updates. We're still in open enrollment for staff, so there could be some changes there, although we don't expect any. So we covered the executive overview. We recapped capital and debt, which we went through this past summer, and then we talked about general fund just to start with. And now for this meeting, we're going to continue the budget review, and I'm going to mostly cover the special revenue funds and utilities. And then coming out of tonight's meeting, what we want to do is get the direction to publish the budget summary and public hearing notice. We have to get that into the Oregon Observer 15 days before November 17th for the public hearing and then the village board approval. But we still have the November 3rd meeting to keep reviewing. All right, so last meeting, we covered property taxes. We covered assessed value, property tax rates, impact on property taxes in general. Care I added in this one, so this is the actual notice of public hearing and budget summary that we have to put in the Observer. So that's kind of a consolidated budget schedule required by statute. We talked about different factors impacting the budget, employee compensation, and is there anything from the last meeting on that I can answer any questions on, anything that you've thought of since that meeting? All right. Anything on capital projects, capital funds, debt? We covered that at the last meeting as well. I know we've covered that quite extensively over the last 6 months or so. All right. All right. So, so general fund. Last meeting, I kind of talked about sort of the two different kind of but funds that we have within the general fund. This is our operating government funds. So we have, which is primarily made up of, staff and operating costs, and then contracted costs, and just general operating costs, and kind of talked about the structure of what that looks like. Have information in here on just sort of how that all breaks down. Here's a good picture of Larry right there. All right. One thing.
You own ties.
One thing I wanted to cover, and I can certainly take any questions on the general fund budget, but one thing I wanted to cover that we didn't previously is the Youth Center, Oregon Youth Center. So we do provide a budgetary contribution, an annual budgetary contribution to the Youth Center. This year in 2025, we provided $17,000. We did get a budgetary request from them here that I have in the packet, requesting a 10% increase. Which would be $1,700. Historically, we've asked them, and they've attended a board meeting during the budget process to speak to kind of the last year of what's happened at the youth center and speak to their budget request. Extended that invitation. They declined. They weren't able to make any of our meetings here in September and October, November. So the written request is here in the budget document. I will say that for right now, in the budget that's presented, it is presented with just the $17,000 that was provided this year. So I did not add in the 10% increase that they requested. We can certainly change that. It would be an extra $1,700. We would, as we've talked about, we've balanced the budget off of investment income. We would just up that another $1,700 there. Happy to get feedback on that from the board. We'll talk about OCA Media here in just a second. But obviously they attended one of the previous meetings and they requested a 3% reduction, which we've obviously accommodated. Those two entities, OCA and OIC, are kind of the only two kind of exterior entities that we sort of provide ongoing budgetary requests for. So I've just kept it flat, but I'm happy to get feedback on that for any changes up or down, I guess.
Could clarify, you're looking for,
So right now I have the same $17,000 for
Yes.
the Oregon Youth Center in the 2026 budget as we provided in 2025. They requested a 10% increase, which is $1,700.
Yeah.
If you would like me to add that in there, you certainly can.
I'm good with not adding it in, keeping it flat.
I am as well.
Me too.
We need one more.
Same.
Okay,
Unanimous consent.
no change.
Ditto.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, is there any other questions that I can answer on the general fund at all? Anything at all? All right.
Go ahead.
So, let's talk special revenue funds. I'm just gonna run through, I'm not gonna go through everything here, but I'm gonna go through just highlighting a few of the things. So obviously the library, and I should add, special revenue funds, generally sort of are irregular, non-operating revenues and expenditures for different things, the library being the one exception. But something that is carved out of the general fund to very specifically delineate funds that need to be segregated for some specific reason from the general fund. It might be because they legally need to be separated, or we just have a preference that they're separated, or they're just funds that just maybe happen some years, very irregular, maybe it's a grant, or maybe it's donations or things like that, stuff that we can't really rely on for general fund operating revenues. So the big one in the special revenue funds is the library. They have two separate special revenue funds. One is just the library fund, which is kind of that irregular, non-operating revenue stuff for grants or donations or things that they might buy, like one-time equipment purchases or supplies. The other one is the library operating fund. That one is tracking very similar to what we do with the general fund in that it's predominantly salaries and benefits, and then also includes their annual operating expenditures, buying materials, books, and things of that nature, and then also maintaining costs for their library, the building. The one thing I pointed out here in the budget document is you'll see a pretty sizable increase in the intergovernmental revenues for county grants. That's because they now have, in making these calculations for these revenues, they now have a full year of the new library, 2024, calculated into these things. And so the usage that we've seen and the size of the building, all of those things help to contribute to making these amounts of money go up. And so to the tune of about $65,000 this year. So this is ongoing, generally ongoing revenue. Obviously, the county board plays a part in setting these, but generally these are ongoing revenues. So that was a very big positive for not just the library budget, but then that feeds back into the operating budget for the general fund. And so there wasn't a need for as big of a general property tax contribution to the library. It only went up about a little over 1%. So that was a big benefit that really helped out the overall village budget. So the cable TV franchise fund, this is primarily related to expenditures for OCA Media. And we've talked about that a little bit. They obviously came at the previous meeting and talked about their request, which is that 3% reduction. One thing that I want to call out, and I know I've called it out, I think every budget since I've been here, is the fund has had a fund balance, and that fund balance has slowly been decreasing year over year as the expenditures have outpaced the revenues that this fund gets. That is primarily from cable franchise fees and then a state aid program that offsets some of those franchise fees. So what's going to happen in 2027 is we're finally at that point where the year-end fund balance is going to be too low to continue to provide the contribution that we have been providing to OCA Media. And so, if you look at this year, we're providing just a little bit under $130,000 in the draft 2026 budget. We're only going to have resources enough to support about $116,000 next year. And then it's going to continue to go down year after year. So I know we've talked to OCA Media. They're aware of this, but just calling that out so that everybody is aware of the situation that's going on there. The Drug-Free Community Grant Fund, this is the Oregon Cares arrangement that we have for their federal grant. This is mostly a pass-through. It is just a pass-through where we get those funds and then pass them on to Oregon Cares, which is one thing I want to call out this year is their new 5-year grant now includes some cost for village staff, and so you can see that's being reflected there now. The Senior Center Donations Fund, this one will probably start to play a part here in the next year as we start to get underway with that effort. But I just wanted to note that we are looking at probably about $350,000 already being in that fund for use towards the Senior Center project. The one thing I'll note on this one, Preserve the Water Tower Fund, this one was set up back in 2017 when the village did the refurbishment project. It's been pretty much dormant since then. It has about $1,000 in there. There's been some minor fundraising effort every year that didn't happen this year. In fact, I think in 2024, the cost of the fundraising effort exceeded the donations received. So one thing Lisa and I talked about is actually closing this account and just moving the funds to the general fund and assigning them there. The disproportionate amount of bookkeeping and auditing and stuff that we have to do for a couple $100 really at this point doesn't seem worth it. Cemetery fund, the police special revenue fund. Again, these are all things that we might get donations or grants or one-time revenues that might go to a specific purchase of a piece of equipment or for running an event or that sort of thing. The refuse and recycling pickup fund. This is for basically an in-out for revenues from curbside collection, and then the cost of curbside collection. Tourism fund, this is the 70% of the room tax the village collects. That 70% is legally restricted to certain tourism promotion and development costs, which the Tourism Commission has to manage. Canine fund, affordable housing fund. I'll just make a note on this one. So, and I know this has come up sporadically, but the tax increment district law in the state of Wisconsin allows municipalities to keep a TIF district open 1 year longer than would otherwise be allowed. And all of the revenue collected in that one extra year can be used to be put into an affordable housing fund, which can be spent on affordable housing stuff. The village did this in 2018, 2017, when TIF District 2 closed. And there was about just a little bit under $500,000 that came out of that. The village has used it on a few different projects at Genesis, the Habitat for Humanity project. We still have about $150,000 in there, and we certainly share that with developers and people who are interested in it. And at some point, we may be able to use those. Public Art Fund, anything related to the village's public art initiatives, lots of donations and grants there. Community Events Fund, this was set up a couple of years ago when we hired the Recreation and Programming Coordinator position. This is for the Sounds of Summer and the movies in the park that we've done. One thing that we noticed on this one is we did end up in just a little bit of a deficit last year. It was about $900, and it's on track for a little bit more of a deficit this year. One thing that we've noted is that this year in the general fund we had some dollars set aside for a reservation program, but we ended up figuring out that our current village website is actually sufficient for the reservation software that we want to use. And so that left about $9,500 unspent there. And we would propose moving that over to here to make this fund whole. I guess the only thing I would note on this, and we've talked about this internally, and I think actually Amanda brought this up in one of the budget meetings this summer, was if we don't have sufficient funds to do, when we're not getting enough donations and fundraising to do some of these things, then it gets backfilled, backstopped by the general fund. So if we're not able to sustain that financially, then in a future year we might have to look at pulling back on those events. Or otherwise, the general fund needs to support it, and the dollars that are there need to be divvied up for that purpose. Any questions on special revenue funds, any of them?
Lynn, sorry.
That's okay. So to your point, Martin, about this, what's the official community events fund? You had said in a future year, we probably need to talk about what we should do. It seems like maybe that's now if we are running such a high, I mean, $948 is a deficit. 6,000 is a big jump. And so I'm wondering, do we feel comfortable with this for next year? Or do we need to be having this conversation like now in how we're funding this fund and using it?
I think because now that we've seen the trend, I think we've at least noted it internally for watching it for these different things. So I think I'm comfortable keeping it as is for next year, for 2026. Understanding that staff is going to watch those costs and the fundraising piece more closely, and if we get to maybe through some of these events and we're not seeing what we hoped we would see for revenue, maybe we don't do a second Movies in the Park, which we do in September, I think. So we can kind of keep a little bit of an eye on it in terms of trying to make sure that we watch that. I'm at least good for that for 2026, but we'll see where things trend.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Mark.
All right. The other thing that I just want to cover under tonight's meeting, so obviously we are tax increment finance districts, all that information is in there. I actually want to cover that at the next meeting, but I wanted to cover tonight the utilities. And I have some information in the budget just about utilities, proprietary funds in general. These funds look and act a little bit differently than our governmental budgets. I have some information in there that walks through that and explains that. They're presented a little bit differently. They even function and feel a little bit different in the context of a calendar budget year with government budgeting. They present numbers differently than our government budgets. So there's information in there about that. But the things I wanted to really highlight are things that we've talked about, but just things I want to remind folks on. So when we're talking about sewer, we had Ellers here at the September 15th meeting. We obviously, every year we do our annual cash flow analysis to make sure that our rates are covering where our costs are going for our utilities. And as you recall, we do have a recommended 30% increase needed in revenue for the sewer utility to be able to continue covering its operating and maintenance and take on some of the infrastructure and capital improvement projects and subsequent debt payments that will come with those. So these increases, especially here in this 3-year period that we're in the 3rd year of, we've talked about these and shown these every year for the last few years. We're on the backside of these increases, and obviously there's some other ones projected out here, but not quite as substantial as what we're kind of going through in these this 3-year period and 2-year period especially. So what this looks like in terms of an impact on an average single-family home, we're looking at about $140 annual increase, or about a $11 increase monthly for sewer. So in terms of what that does for, everybody likes to compare communities and costs and things of that nature. So right now, we're kind of hovering on that lower end of other close by in Dane County communities for sewer rates, which is where we've sort of been for quite a while. With the 2026 proposed, we kind of start to fall in towards that median, maybe a little bit above the median, but on average, we're still about $54 below the average sewer utility bill. And in fact, if we did all 10 years of projected increases, we're still below a few of these communities. And you can kind of see this, how things stratify with communities. Smaller communities tend to be on top because there's kind of a economies of scale thing going on. And then you sort of see some of these mid-sized communities starting to hover in the middle, and then you see some of the larger communities at the bottom. So there's just a little bit of an arc of costs for providing sewer services.
But our water's better than anybody else's, right?
That's right. And our wastewater is better than everybody else. So I guess the reason why I bring this up, and obviously we've talked about this and touched on it in multiple meetings, but what will happen is when the budget comes for approval in November, on November 17th, we always have a resolution with the sewer utility rate increase that attaches with that. So when you see that on the 17th, I'm just reminding people of what the context of that is and where that's coming from. On the water side, again, we've talked on this, we've hit on this, but I just want to touch on it again. We had Ellers here on July 21st. We talked about water rates. The board approved the rate case to the Public Service Commission, and that's a little bit of a difference on the water and sewer. Water has to get rates approved through the PSC. Sewer can be approved locally by the governing body. So water we have submitted. It's being worked on there. Now it's out of our hands basically. So now it's the Public Service Commission's decision to increase rates and to what degree. We expect that should be coming in early 2026. And rates will go into place whenever the PSC says they can. But that one was a 51% need for revenue, and then the average annual increase on an average home, single-family home, is about $160. And you can see, still some increases projected based on our capital improvement plan out over the next 10 years, but significantly less in terms of percentages as far as the one that's being proposed right now. And two, there again, and we saw this comparison in the other's presentation, and I believe is actually in here. Yeah. So very similar to what you see on the sewer side in terms of where we look like against our peers. Always been hovering sort of in that lower tier, kind of in the lower third often. And with this increase, it's going to put us kind of into that middle, slightly above middle pack. And of course, as I think Brian from Eller said, if you're in the bottom, you probably can be expecting an increase shortly. So based on what we're seeing and projecting for water and sewer rates, we might be sort of a little bit over the hump in terms of kind of catching up. You'll see, in both water and sewer, we went about 12 or 13 years without any rate increases. And obviously there's been a concerted effort in the last few years with village boards trying to take care of some infrastructure needs and things that need to be caught up on. So kind of getting through some of those challenges and maybe getting into a little bit more of some rate stability for still increasing, but a little bit not as significant as what we've seen in the last couple of years. So wanted to highlight that water and sewer budgets are in there, as I sort of covered with the general fund and how those funds kind of structurally break down. When you look at the utility budgets, it's going to be primarily rates, right? That's the revenue. And then when you look at the expenses, they're very more specifically broken down into functions. And you'll see how we try to break out the labor costs, and then you'll see other expenses beyond labor are very maintenance heavy. So these are services that are very capital and asset intensive, and so a lot of the costs are going to be based around maintenance of those assets. And then just last note, fiduciary funds, we have one of those, very inconsequential for budgeting purposes, but I'll highlight that. And then the next meeting, we can cover anything that's changed, and then I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the TIF districts, but happy to take any other questions on any of these, including utilities.
Questions? No? And you're good for tonight?
Yeah.
We need a motion,
What's
right?
that?
So, yeah, so for what I like to get at this meeting is just the village board.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Directing staff
I
to
just
vote.
wanted to make sure you're done with your comments.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
yep.
Okay. All right, before we do that, I'd like to propose a budget amendment. The chair moves that the village board directs staff to establish a human resources manager position effective mid-year 2026. Funded in part by reallocating $64,000 from the 2026 budget currently allocated to OCA Media. That's my motion. Nothing, huh? Okay, Lynn, are you seconding?
I'll second.
Thank you. Some comment. The failed referendum didn't eliminate the need for a human resources position. In discussions with Martin and Candy, they felt that we could add that position mid-year next year if we could find funds from somewhere else. A human resources manager will give the village the structure and expertise needed to support our employees and department heads. This position will oversee onboarding and training, lead recruitment, retention efforts, and ensure compliance with labor laws, reducing liability risk and improving consistency across the organization. Adding this position will increase staffing hours available in the clerk's office Adding this position will enable our administrator to work more closely with the Community Development Department, thus complementing the efforts of the Community Development Director and attracting commercial development to the village. Right now, HR issues fall to the village administrator's office, which forces a reactive approach and takes time away from strategic priorities. The June 6th budget resolution that we passed asked us to prioritize essential services and optimize staff time. This action does both, strengthen our internal operations and allow department heads to focus on serving the community. In short, this position is an investment in our people, efficiency, and the long-term stability of the village organization, which are our core responsibilities. I would ask the trustees to support this action. I can think of no other action this board can take that shows our support for the entire 70-person village staff in the upcoming 2026 budget year and beyond. Discussion. Amanda.
So the first thing that comes to mind is the community events and programs. I would rather cut all that, frankly, than cut OCA media. Now that's $12,000, right? Is that what I'm looking at? Is
Well,
in
the,
that?
the costs only exist because there's donations for those costs. So if you get rid of that, then there is no revenue. So
Okay,
you're not.
so there
you're
are
not create-
donations for some of that.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. So that budget is designed to be self-sustaining. Now
I gotcha, I
now we're
gotcha.
having obviously some challenges with that. So I guess if you're saying let's eliminate that, well then no expense, no revenue to either to reallocate. So you're not gaining anything. from
Okay,
doing it.
okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Tom.
I guess I would speak to the need for the HR position, and I firmly agree that we need that position, and it's a very important position. I don't agree with, drawing funds that are coming into a special account that's designated for it. That mostly it's funded from cable franchise fees. The directive was to find other areas and other ways besides cutting our visibility and transparency, and I guess I would have to, while I support an HR position, I don't agree with the source of the funds.
Lynn? Oh,
Sure.
I thought you.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. We knew that there was going to be difficult decisions. We knew that there were going to be things that were tough. I don't feel like this is a slam dunk, but I think that this is something to focus in on because of the work that the village is dedicated to do. And the village is dedicated to the work that this board gives it, but also it's a 70-person staff that needs to be taken care of appropriately. And I think the liability I see with not having someone to manage human resources is great. Takes one misstep, one miscomment, one missed situation, and we could be facing a really devastating financial impact. So while I am not excited about the idea of cutting funding there, I think that it's the tough decision we have to make.
Anybody else? Rick and then Tim.
Yeah, I would be very much in favor of finding a way to be able to support having an HR manager. I am concerned about the source of the funding that you're recommending because I also see that there's a dwindling source there that's going on that over time seems like it would be potentially not available to us and draw us into being required to pay for it in another way anyway. So I'm not too sure I can be supportive of the current source of funding.
Tim.
I believe OCA adds a significant value to the community, both in terms of things like tonight, they're broadcasting this meeting, as well as some of the work they do for our athletes and some of the opportunities they create for our students at the high school to learn the business of media, and the mechanics of filming and stuff. And so I would not, while I support the idea of an HR manager, I would not support this significant of a cut to the OCA budget. My biggest concern would be that this isn't a case of they'd have to learn to get by with less. This probably kills OCA, and it probably never comes back. And so that's why I'd have a hard time supporting this amendment as it stands.
I just want to reiterate, I feel like the OCA media is not a core charge of the village. I do believe that they, with the budget reduction, they could still support broadcasting village meetings. And I would also observe that if not majority, a good part of what they do broadcast is sports, and that's good, but that's a school function, and we're supporting a school function at the cost of adding a position that I think the village direly needs. Who's next? Anyone? Okay, we have a motion by the chair, second by Lynn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Well, that's clear. Okay. Let's see. Okay, 8D, which is what we just finished discussing, the staff recommendation, motion to direct staff to publish budget summary and notice of public hearing set for Monday, November 17th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Looking for a motion, Tim and Tom. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. 8E, resolution number 25-36, a resolution in favor of exceeding the local levy limit for charges assessed by the Oregon Area Fire EMS District. Staff recommendation, Amanda and Tim. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9. New business items for discussion and/or possible action. A, regulation and enforcement of electric bicycles, scooters, and other similar personal mobility devices within the village of Oregon. Chief had a very detailed memo. I'm sure you'd like to comment.
And video.
I'll just briefly speak to it. Excuse me. I really just wanted to make 3 different points in my memo. Number 1, we recognize that there are many people in our community that actually want to comply, but it can be quite confusing. So that's why we did videos to help educate. We have actually had people come in and ask officers, here's my piece of equipment, how and where can I ride this? Secondly, we had to help educate our officers because the law is not simple, and it really puts quite a bit of burden on our officers to try to figure out what kind of piece of equipment this is and how quick and whatnot. And then lastly, and it's no surprise, but most of these complaints come in on second shift. It is hands down our busiest shift. They're typically call to call. These are more a proactive type of enforcement, so that certainly has been an issue as well. I will say we have had several contacts with predominantly juveniles riding these devices, whether they have motors on them or they're electric. And it more has to do with just causing a disturbance while riding it, cutting in and out of traffic. I will say the UTV has been very helpful as the SRO. I'll jump on that. And then when school's releasing, which is usually when they're real quick on them because they can't wait to get out, and I don't blame them. But I'll get on there, and then, now that they're seeing me more and more often, they're watching over their shoulders. They're making sure that they're stopping at stop signs, that sort of thing. So as you'll see, there's just it's a lot. You'll see the state statutes, which can be confusing. So even for our officers, Lieutenant Niehaus, I had her break it down into scenarios, or most common scenarios, what they should be looking for, what they should be documenting. I'm happy to take any questions. I will forewarn you, I'm not an expert on these. This is plaguing many communities in the county, I'm sure nationwide. Some are trying creative ordinances. But it's, you have to be careful because you also don't want to encompass other people that are riding them responsibly. So we find that many people who, it may not be easy to ride a bicycle, a pedaling bicycle, ride electric scooters. And so there have been a few municipalities that have put ordinance out that cause more restriction when it really is meant for juveniles, maybe. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Larry, I thought you might have.
I just wanted to add that no one should hold against Chief that she's not an expert on this because the statutes are very, very, very complex. And how they tie together different vehicles, like for instance, you can't regulate electric bikes differently than regular bicycles, and communities really wrestle with this. And each of the different types of these different types of vehicles have sort of a different lane. And as she said, if you try to focus in on one, you may be grabbing up quite a bit of other users, other types. So what I always recommend is that if it rises to the level that you need to prohibit an action other than reckless use and not following, like for instance, if there's something happening on a sidewalk that's really dangerous and it's repeated enough that you want to do something about it, you can prohibit the use of bicycles, e-bikes, and some of these things on sidewalks. That has a broader consequence for nobody being able to use them. But so what I always recommend is really zero in on which of these types of things is the biggest problem, and then we can look together at what the options are for that and what other unintended consequences there might be with trying to regulate that.
Yeah, and what I will add is, you know, obviously, these are all juveniles. I can't think of a single adult that we've had to stop and talk with. But what we really try to do is, because we can't be out there 24/7 only dealing with this issue, we start with just educating, making the parent aware. 9 times out of 10, the parent's not aware of how their child is riding this and how dangerous they're being. And we try to get their partnership so that they can either A, take the scooter away until they can ride it safely, or B, they can better monitor their child when they are riding it. So that's what we're trying first, is that approach. Now, if the juvenile still is adamant they're gonna ride it the way they want, or not getting any compliance from the parent, we may cite. But we first really do try to start with that educational piece.
Questions, comments? Lynn?
Sorry, the only comment I had, I appreciate all of this, and I do appreciate the video. I watched it, it's well done. I know that this is growing in popularity, and I expect over the holiday season, this is going to be something that parents purchase for their children. So if we could increase the visibility of that video, maybe around like Black Friday, or, you know, I guess moments where we would buy these things because our kids are asking for them constantly. Just because I think you're right, it's a use by a juvenile, but sometimes I think parents forget that there is structure around this, and they have to sort of be partners for us here, in at least sort of helping to make sure that they're aware of the risks and ultimately the boundaries that we'd like them to abide by.
Tom?
Yeah, I really appreciated the videos. Actually gives me a little bit of something that when someone approaches me, I can point to something. There was a couple pieces in there that I wasn't aware of about the different grades of bikes and this and that. And I thought that was actually well presented and easily understood. You know where to look on your bike. You look right here and it'll tell you what kind of bike you have. I looked through all the potential scenarios, and kudos to your officers for sorting this out. I mean, that many scenarios, like, well, we got one of these, one of those, and maybe he's doing this, maybe he's doing that. Just, I was surprised that the stand-up scooters our class is a bicycle, is that correct?
In some ways.
In some ways.
In some ways.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
But I just,
Their use is fairly protected though in the statutes. That's one of the, that and a Segway are sort of the most, in my mind, the most protected uses.
They
You
got,
don't see a lot of Segways anymore, but.
they have the best lobbyists.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. You know, my youngest, I fear the day he gets a driver's license, but, and he's my, cop's kid. But with him, he's already crashed his. We even have a governor on it, and he still, you know, somehow, maneuvered and crashed it. You know, and this really upsets our community. They see these kids riding around and how dangerous it is. And, you know, we try to get out there as fast as we can. But I'm really glad to hear that you saw the videos and would think to direct. I would hope, whether it's DOT or some organization comes out with a video that maybe talks about a case where it impacted someone's, you know, health. Because I think that tends to resonate. Obviously, we don't have that. We can do recruitment videos. We do great at those, but like, that would be beyond our scope. But yeah, these are very difficult to work through. It also is difficult too to make contact with somebody who's riding on one of these in a squad car. So that's why I do thank all of you for your support with the UTV. That does help a lot. It has lights. It has we can talk over, you know, a loudspeaker to try to get somebody to pull over. The one gap I did notice, when this all started kind of coming together and we put this cheat sheet together, the one area there's a gap are some of our walking paths have nothing that says you're prohibited from riding a motorized scooter on the pathways. And we don't have that problem yet. But that, you know, if that were to arise, I could certainly bring that to whether it's the Public Safety Committee or the Village Board with some ideas on ordinance. We do have some signage as it comes off Cusick, that pathway back there, but in riding all the pathways, I didn't see anything. And I believe that would have to be specific to ordinance. So, yeah.
Else? Well, it sounds like, there's not a lot we can do. How about that?
And there's lots of statute and
Right.
municipal ordinance out there.
Yeah, so you have the
It's
tools
just-
you need, it's just a matter of,
Right. It's
Yeah.
challenging and you know, with the right staffing,
okay,
yeah, it will hopefully decrease a little bit.
all right, thanks, Chief, thanks, Larry. Okay, let's see. 10, reports of village officers, department heads, and consultants. This is for information only. A, the village administrator report in your packet. Yeah. And B, police chief report, media release dated October 2nd, 2025, regarding operating while intoxicated and hit and run. Questions for the chief? Any comments? Okay. Item 11, announcements and miscellaneous business. A, announcements, comments, communications, upcoming meetings and events, and miscellaneous business. We'll start with department head, staff members. No. Village board. Tim?
Yes, I would like to announce that the Oregon Area Fire and EMS Division has achieved an ISO rating of 2 for their coverage of the village. This places them as one of the best departments within Dane County. Only Madison has a better score. Low numbers are better in this rating. Madison is a 1. Oregon within the village is a 2, and within the towns is a 4. So I think that's a great accomplishment by our men and women in the fire department, and I'd like to congratulate them publicly.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Lynn?
Trunk or treat on Saturday, 2 to 4.
Okay,
Um,
be there.
Yeah, be there.
Here.
I'll be
Be
there
here.
in my hocus pocus glory. Also, I have two committee openings for the DEI committee. For those that are interested, there's applications on our website. Please fill them out, please.
Amanda?
Still 3 openings on transportation.
Okay, anybody else? 11B, future agenda items. Anybody? No, item 12. Is our business concluded. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.